Welcome to my next video on Endless Space. I'm going to be discussing victory conditions as well as races. The first one I'm going to discuss are the United Empire. I'm going pretty much in order, but these guys, their diplomatic alignment on anybody doesn't matter. It just gives you some flavors text. Their gameplay is a little bit helpful. Their home planet type is really important information to have because it sort of determines how you're going to, what kind of strategy you're going to take at the start. A Terran planet, for example, is going to be more based on food and getting the rest of the star system shored up in terms of population, being a cradle of life. But it also mentions victory types, which we're going to be getting into in a minute. These guys are responsible for economic/military victories. They have some bonuses, mostly around the fact that they gain some strong ships. They also have some small economic bonuses, but one of the important things that they have is a tax rate that boosts their industry. So the lower tax rate, the higher industry is throughout the entire empire, which means as a result you can produce shit tons of ships, and you can really swarm your opponents. So moving on from the United Empire are the Cravers. Their most notable attribute is the fact that they have eternal war. They cannot be appeased with any other faction, and their second most notable feature is the fact that they have a special depletion counter on planets. As you colonize planets, they're going to gain an insane bonus to start, but then over time that starts to degrade down until they become depleted, and the Cravers constantly need to keep expanding or else they'll die. It's really important, and you can just, because you get that big bonus to everything, including science, you can, if you swarm and colonize, then you can really get some big bonuses that way. It's meant, I think, to counter both colonization disapproval. The more star systems you colonize, the more people become unhappy because everything is so freaking far apart. But additionally, it's meant to discourage or counter, I should say, the happiness minuses that you get for colonizing less than ideal planet types like arid, desert, arctic, gas giants, etc. The Sophons are my absolute favorite race in the game. I love scientific races, and these guys have amazing scientists. They even start out with a number of very powerful science-based technologies pre-discovered. As a result, they have just insane bonuses. Like the United Empire, their tax rate affects their science bonus. So at the start of the game, you actually start with, I think, a 20% science bonus based on the current tax rate. It's either 20% or 10%, I forget. But either way, it's still a very important ability to have. They have some other things on here which are kind of weird, like fast travelers. I don't know why a science group needs that, and I don't know why they need additional sensor range, but they have it, I guess, to reflect their important technology. But they are not very good at defending the star system from attack, so you want to make sure to keep people from invading as much as possible and really focus on building those planetary defenses up. They're also not very skilled at building, so they have a 10% increase to cost to build anything on any star system. So as a result, it can take them a little bit to get everything underway, but if you make sure that you focus and just purchase outright industry-improving buildings, it'll really help them move along later in the game. The Horatio are, story-wise, my absolute favorite race. They talk about, or they are a race of clones, and they can actually clone other heroes at the same cost that it would cost to hire them. You get the same experience level, the same abilities, everything. You get an identical hero. They also have a bonus to population, and they have bonuses to influence as well. So basically, by having so much population, it says they have population class wonder. There's no victory condition for population that comes to mind, but the wonder victory is there's a special technology you discover. If you build it 5 times each on one different star system, you win the game. And the more population you have, the more bonus you're going to get out of buildings. The Hisho, these are an advanced race. If it is your first time playing Endless Space, please don't play the Hisho. They are very difficult to play, and the main reason is because they lack science, and this really, 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 really hurts them early on. These guys are extremely accurate in space combat and ridiculously deadly. On the Hisho, if you're playing as them, make sure that you're getting a lot of kinetic weapons, because your accuracy makes kinetic weapons extremely deadly. They're designed to do the damage that they do because they're expected to miss most of the time. But the Hisho will just power through enemy defenses like nobody else in the game. They win mostly through military. I mean, the population helps with producing ships. And that's all I have to say about them. The Sowers, I have a big warm feeling for the Sowers, a race of automatons that can settle any planet regardless of technology. Now they get some minuses, but they're also a little bit slower, but they have a big bonus to industry. They also have some bonus to food as a result through industry, and they start off with a couple of other technologies. They also happen to be a bit more optimistic, and that little bonus may not seem like a lot, but when a desert and an Arctic both have -10, you can completely negate settling one of those with just optimistic. The Pilgrims are a really interesting race. They mostly are going to win through diplomacy and military, but they also have some really good science under their belts through a couple of these technologies over here. The Pilgrims also tend to focus on building up very strong heroes. As soon as you get a hero, you can level it right up to level 3, which allows you to get started with your heroes and placing them on your home star system and just rocket through production. They can expand like crazy. They also have the ability to lift up their entire colony and send it to a whole other star system, which is useful if you're being pushed back and there's something somewhere else and you don't want to lose all the bonuses. You can pull back your front line, quite literally, and set it up a little closer to home. It's also useful if you think you've colonized a good planet, then something much better comes along. Why wait for a colony ship? Just send the whole thing over. The Amoeba are strongly recommended by me as the best race to start with. They have absolutely no minuses, and as a result, they are considered by many to be one of the most, the strongest starting races. They are pretty good at diplomacy and military, but they also have a bonus to economy that isn't immediately apparent. Because they're so good with diplomacy, there's some technology that says if you form alliances with people, you get a whole bunch of money and science. So they can do pretty well in those areas, but I'm not sure if they're good enough to necessarily pull off an economic or science victory, because the technology for that is much later in the game. The Amoeba start out being able to see the entire galaxy and every single planet in every single star system. So you see the entire layout and have a sense of where everything is. It's really useful to you know, play with them, or at least have them on your side. So yeah, the automatons are kind of a weird group because they are very optimistic anarchists. Anarchists basically means they get some minus to command point caps, but in short, they are a economic race for sure, hands down. They also do really well with diplomacy, but that's mostly just to shore up their economic victory. They are very powerful with economy, and their bonus to, somewhere in here, there's a bonus to happiness as well, and that also helps settling more complicated star systems. Lastly, I have the Sheredyn. These guys may say economic/military. They're really economic. These guys are really good with putting together bonuses. They get 10% bonus to money on the star system. They also get +1 per person on any planet anywhere. So all of that stuff means that they are going to be really powerful. They also have some bonuses to defense and on ships, mostly so that they can stand up against people like the United Empire and not get completely overrun. The other people over here are just some variations on these main races. You can make your own custom race. I'm not going to discuss that in this video, though. So I want to briefly discuss victory types. So the first thing that you can get is a score victory. A score victory is pretty straightforward. By the end of the game, if you have the highest score, then after a fixed number of turns, you win. I usually turn this off because the computer tends to beat me at it, so you might not want to have that on if you're a beginner. So the primacy victory is pretty much just conquer everybody else, and when you have, you win. Fine. Wonder victory. You must discover the appropriate technology at the end of this exploration tree, and then you have to build 5 copies of it throughout your civilization, and you win. The science victory is one of the harder victories to achieve. You have to discover this particular technology at the end of the applied sciences tree, and I recommend going down all 3 other trees, or actually not all 3 other trees, the military tree and the diplomacy and trading tree, because at the end of both of those, there is a thing that says minus 33% cost to science victory, and that makes it much, much more probable that you'll actually be able to achieve this victory. It's not easy to achieve at all, and a lot of other victories are a lot easier to come by. Diplomacy victory. Yeah. This is a little more difficult than it sounds, because eventually your borders are going to press up with other races, and they're not going to like you. So unless you have 8 people playing in a game, then it's going to be really difficult to get this diplomatic victory, and it's one of the ones I really dislike. I think it may actually be harder than science victory, because I've never accomplished it, but if anyone else has played it and thinks it's easier, let me know what your strategy is. The economic victory is really straightforward. If at any point in the game you have generated 52,000 credits, whether or not it's in the bank, you win. The expansion victory kind of goes hand in hand with supremacy. If at any point you control 75% of the systems in the galaxy, you win. Because, frankly, 25% of the population of the galaxy is not going to be able to hold you off anyways. So, that's victories.